Okay. Hi,
All right.
it's Tim Heidecker here. I'm joined via Skype by director, co-writer Rick Alverson,
Hi.
and we're watching the movie called The Comedy. And so, Rick,
Yeah.
how's it going?
It's going all right. Sitting here watching the movie.
Let's talk about this music. The song "Baby."
Donnie and Joe Emerson, early 70s, right? 71, 74.
No, wrong. Late '70s.
Late 70s.
There's actually a interesting story about these two guys. They their father built them a recording studio, and they made this album sort of in this recording studio on this farm in Spokane, Washington. Um, and it's just been
North of Spokane.
yeah, it's just been re-released. His two brothers just making records together. Um, Anyways, this is me and Jeff Jensen, totally nude.
Yep.
I'm doing my best to keep my genitals from being exposed. Jeff Jensen had a little bit of a harder time with it.
Yeah.
Wasn't as
Sure.
successful.
And we got the credits here.
I remember meeting Jeff Jensen. Eric and I had done a show in New York, and Greg Turkington invited Jeff to the show. And after the show, we went out for drinks, and I've never seen somebody so drunk as that Jeff Jensen was. Just
Yeah. He was
obnoxious.
in character, as they say.
He was doing his life shtick, I guess. Of And I really just didn't care for him. He was annoying and obnoxious. But then we met again. We met a couple different because we turned out he was going to be in this movie, and I ended up loving the guy. He's a great guy.
And incredible asset to the picture.
Yeah, I mean he's just got such a photogenic face. It must have been exciting for you as a filmmaker to have his face available to you.
And here we are in Yonkers. Shot this in Yonkers.
Yeah, one of the last days of the shoot, if I recall.
Yeah, very last day of the shoot, 17-day shoot. And the previous scene was on the East River, and we shot so much on the boat that we didn't use. Um,
Yeah, I tell people that this was a 17-day shoot, which is an insanely uh, small amount of time to make a feature film. But what's also impressive is there's about 6 scenes that were shot that aren't in the film. So you could have almost made a movie and a half in the time that it took to make this movie. Would you agree?
yeah, exactly a movie and a half. We
Yeah.
could have, yeah,
You could have made a full feature and a really good, like 20-minute long short.
yeah. We're thinking about doing a sequel. Will just be a half feature.
That's fine. This is a nice find. This actor thought he does a good job here
Seth, yeah,
of holding his own a little bit. A lot of real eating and real drinking going on here.
yeah, absolutely necessary. I mean, the funny thing with I understand if you're a reformed alcoholic and you're contractually obliged to not drink, but just like when you actually eat, when you're eating, it seems like the drink while drinking. I mean, I guess it's I suppose some vegetarians eat vegetarian meat on sets, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about the drinking because we knew there was going to be a lot of it in the movie. The character was going to be doing a lot of drinking. And I think we decided that as long as you were keeping an eye on me, that things weren't going too crazy, and it was not seeming obnoxious, or I wasn't becoming obnoxious, or it was becoming dangerous, that it would make sense to, when appropriate, have a drink or two, if the scene required me to have a drink or two, because I think there's nothing more embarrassing and cringy than watching a bad actor, which I would consider myself a bad actor, um, uh,
Approximate
pretending to be
drunkenness.
drunk. Yeah, pretending to be drunk, or pretending to have had a few drinks.
I mean, and there's
So
something too about, I mean, in keeping with the 17-day shoot and the economics of a smaller budget. I mean, these sorts of things are kind of no-brainers because they function on a couple different levels. I mean, they let us get to where we need to be with a very direct authenticity and a kind of economy,
right.
and it's just, I mean, it's a really direct way of approaching the material, regardless.
And I was, I mean, it was the summertime. It was New York, so I was treating this entire experience as a little summer vacation, anyways. So
There you're vacationing.
a glass of
That's,
scotch on set was now I don't believe that we started with a full bottle, but you know, we vacillated. I mean, I think there are certain moments where I said I can't. I'd rather not be drinking today, or it's 9 in the morning, so we can, can we fake this? So there was a
yeah.
mix.
Um,
I want to just discuss my weight, because in some of the early reviews of the movie, I was considered fat, or I was considered, the character was described as fat or bloated, and that's a product of bad dietary choices. And um, I when we were when we were talking early on about doing this movie, I said, shouldn't, if this is supposed to be some like hipster dude, shouldn't I be like one of those really skinny guys that you see? And you seem to be okay with me being bloated and overweight.
I mean, it's as we know with all of us in our fluctuations in our weight. I mean, it's usually a product of idleness to some degree, and so it seemed to be particularly for this character in keeping, um, that at the moment he's letting himself go a tiny bit.
Sure. Well, they don't make Pabst Blue Ribbon light, as
No,
far
but
as
it's
I know.
already pretty
It's
light,
pretty
isn't it?
light,
It's
yeah.
fairly light.
Um, so maybe you could talk a little bit about the genesis of this idea, this movie, and how I came to be in it, since we're getting into a scene that probably doesn't need a lot of explaining.
Well, I mean, actually, this scene, this is. I think this is a scene that kind of falls into a little fissure between some of the more combustible uh, moments, um, but it's really indicative, I think, of the early genesis of the concept of what we were doing with the movie, insofar as that this individual is looking for, uh, in a very direct way, a comprehension of his body and the world, and like some sense and utility of himself. I mean, and I think that without any sort of deep, I'm sort of adverse to metaphoric readings, and I mean, I think that this is just a very, very simple uh, exposition of that sort of idea. Um, but it's the beginning of these flirtations too in the movie. So ultimately, the movie is this litany of flirtations with the world that move from the kind of innocent to the marginally diabolical.
And was that one of the early thoughts that you had when coming up with the idea of this movie? This idea of a character who flirts with this kind of danger, or flirts with living in the
Well,
Uh,
the idea of an individual like many of us to some degree that are insulated from certain of the calamities that plague the world in the 21st century, and our good fortune as Americans, and this is a particularly magnified example of that. But the idea that you have a person who's insulated from danger to some degree, and also insulated from the sense of their use in the world because of the life of leisure and the unlimited options of wealth, or even just the typical good fortune of the middle class American,
right.
and the desire to try to delineate where where at what point this individual affects the world, and where the world exists, and how to impact it. And for him, since his world is ultimately, his options are so large, the bubble around him is larger, and I think that he's moving toward the periphery of that, trying to just like a kid, uh, you know
Yeah. Yeah,
uh,
we see. I guess we've this culture and society we've created has created a tremendous amount of restrictions for everybody in it, and we're so used to staying in our lanes and not veering from the certain way we go about our day, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah. I mean, and I found myself, Tim, sometimes at some Q&As, arguing for the creative aspects of this character of Swanson's, little flirtations with the world. It's something that's easily overlooked because of their inflammatory nature. But
right.
I mean, that I think that there's a desire for and to some respect, kind of an admirable effort at affecting the world and delineating those boundaries, and creatively uh, comprehending them. And
Yeah,
um,
I used this term earlier, but I think it's a new term that I've been kind of using, and people I know have been using, life shtick or a life bit. And it's sort of like this performance you play in your life, or this kind of routine you might do, and we all do it in different ways. It's I guess you could just say it's your particular sense of humor, or um, but it's like, some do it a lot more than others, and I think me and Eric and some other people in this movie tend to do it a lot more. In our life, we actually live in a bit, or we live in a in a ironic, in a sense of irony, and use irony, and use sort of the voice of a character voice, almost in the way we express ourselves, and often how we express ourselves to the world. So,
and how you communicate with one another.
exactly like in this scene here that we're watching, there's this very droll, sarcastic conversation between these guys, and there's layers of truth to it, I would think, because it's, it's these guys saying how much they like each other, and they obviously do because they're spending time together, but it's absurd that they would be expressing it in this sort of
Yeah,
touchy-feely, lovey way.
it is one of the more bizarre scenes for me, and one that I was, ultimately we shot a lot for this scene, and when I was able to find these moments where I was confused about particularly Jeff's engagement with the thing, which is so incredible insofar as that he's
Well, Jeff's life shtick here is that he doesn't get the joke.
yeah.
The role he's playing, and he's aware of it.
But also there's almost this dance with sincerity, which is kind of, I think, what made what makes it an exciting scene, in
right,
insofar as that
yeah,
there's this sarcasm and this irony and this about, and it's kind of like a cruelty with essentially fucking with uh, the sincerity and compassion and appreciation. But at the same time, I mean, those things are being analyzed and played with, and it's.
yeah. That's right. Jeff's playing the sincere guy who's like, I know you guys are joking around, but I really do feel this way. While that in itself is insincere, his acknowledgement. Um, maybe I could just say something about Eric being in this movie, my partner in comedy. Um, and your original idea to have us both be in this movie to me seemed like a dangerous idea, or at least a potentially bad idea, just because of the baggage that comes with us both being in something and sort of the identity that the film could possibly have that might not be what you want, which is that this is
Yeah.
not a Tim and Eric movie. And what does it mean for us to both be in something where we're not in control of it and we're not in our sort of in the personas that we are in our work together?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, there it was that was part of that was an exciting element of it for me, and we had talked about some of this on these uncertain boundaries of the whole thing that seemed in keeping with the central themes of the movie and the characters. Just this muddied kind of place, this confusion between, uh, you know, between the sincerity of the thing and the irony
Mm-hmm.
and whether it's a comedy or whether it's a drama and the characters that are involved that would keep people further hopefully destabilized, and I remember Eric saying that this you know talking about the, sort of the how it was exciting because essentially you were bringing some of yourselves into the thing
Yeah.
and we were you were hanging in a room and we were shooting it and there was this muddy place between and you guys in a really brave way you know brought some of that dangerous line between well who are these folks and what is the relationship between their personal lives and their public lives and their brand and
Right.
this and that and
Well,
it
yeah, I guess I thought I was wrong. I thought it was going to be a problem, and it wasn't. And it in every aspect, the shooting made it easier in those scenes. It made it easier for me because once we sort of warmed up and got into the scenes and everything, it became very natural, and which was by design, I think, from you to work with people that knew each other already, so there wasn't this false false relationships necessarily. And then Eric's great in the movie, and I give him credit for being okay with sort of I think it would be weird for me to be in a smaller part in a movie that because this movie unabashedly features me, so it's very generous and sort of big of him to not to sort of give the performance that he gives in this movie, I think, and
yeah
since it's been seen, it also hasn't been an issue for people. People are smart enough to realize that we are different people, and we have the ability to do things outside of that world, and it's in my mind a successful idea that you had.
yeah I mean it's Eric's amazing in it and he's and you're the chemistry that the two of you have as old friends and partners is is incredibly useful in the context of the thing. I mean, there is a outside of the nature of Tim and Eric. There's these two people who know each other incredibly well, and just like with any relationship, I mean, there's a complexity to that, and there's an objective kind of understanding between individuals that can't really be replicated.
Yeah, I think there's a moment where you see me look over to him with just pure affection and understanding of what the in a humorous scene in which he's being funny, looking over at him like I'm on the same page as you, and I see your next move. That kind of look, which you're right is not is very hard to manufacture. She's great.
Alexia, yeah. I've worked with more. Um, Tim, you're an actor, but you're also being a comedian and a comedic actor, and us, featuring you in a very obviously starring role in this drama. I mean, there's a slightly peripheral nature to in a very incredibly exciting way, to your engagement with the thing. It's not straight on. It isn't like I went and cast a dramatic actor, um, and I think that really excites me. And I've always kind of worked that way. Uh, uh, and with Alexia and Caitlin Scheel, I mean, I met with them, and they're trained actresses, dramatic actresses, and it's the most kind of straight on that I've dealt with somebody, even working with Will Oldham. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he's an actor, but primarily he's a musician.
Right.
He spends his time in the realm of that sort of performance. Uh, and it was a great experience, working with those two ladies and their curiosity about the form and their scrutiny and suspicions about movies and acting and the ability to work in this unscripted way. I couldn't have been happier.
This is another scene of me sort of artfully avoiding full frontal nudity as well.
Right.
Having intimate conversations with the DP about what the angle of his shot is and, and such. Maybe one day I'll get over that, but I think it's best left to the imagination. I know there's a lot of people out there just picturing my giant hard cock, and you'll just have to keep imagining it. A lot of scenes down here in the boat, in the cabin,
Yeah.
on the Hudson, the
Yeah, on Hudson.
72nd Street boat basin.
Yeah, and this coincided with there was a very bad, it was a storm, right, that caused, no, it was I'm sorry, there was a fire in the water treatment plant just upriver here,
Oh yeah,
just past these sailboats that dumped like 400 million gallons of raw feces into the Hudson while
right,
we were shooting, and
right.
there was a legitimate danger to full submersion in those waters. So we're
Right.
lucky that didn't occur.
So we're shooting this at a very popular Williamsburg eating establishment,
Enid's.
Enid's. I used to live in Williamsburg in '99 to '03, and spent a lot of. I never did the brunch there because we'd go there to drink, and it always seemed like going back to don't shit where you eat kind of mentality. It was I would imagine that it would stink like vomit and cigarettes and Pabst Blue Ribbon, and that's not where I wanted to eat my breakfast. So, but I'm sure they do a nice job.
But
These fake Bloody Marys were pretty good. Greg Turkington.
Greg Turkington, yeah, star of one of the stars of the teaser.
Yeah, yeah. Brave Greg Turkington, because Greg really spends most of his time in his alter ego, and for him to come on camera as himself, I think, did that take a little bit of convincing on his part, or?
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, one of the most exciting things about working with Greg, and where I found a great affinity with him, and was I reached out to him initially, and he wrote me back a very long um, email about how he felt that that the project could have real great merit, but that he absolutely couldn't be involved because he found these individuals that were represented in it the most despicable creatures on the face of the earth. And proceeded to expound on that in a way that only Greg could. And I just realized, I mean, that for him to deal with those sort of the compromises of playing a character like that and the difficulty and his the intensity of his feelings. I mean, it made me realize that he had to be in the thing. So
Right.
I wouldn't let him go, and he was kind enough to acquiesce
Well,
and
I think from my
through.
perspective, and I think everybody, I know Eric and me and Greg and Jeff. I think when the project came up, we were all kind of like, yeah, sure, thinking in our heads, what are the chances of this actually happening? Good luck, and if you get the money and the schedule works out, let's try to do it. But I think everybody had sort of an arm's length approach to it, and we were all, you know, outside of talking to you, talking to each other, like, what do you think of this? Do you think this is going to happen? Do you think this is going to be good? Should we do this? Those kind of conversations. And my
How do
edit,
we collectively bail? And
yeah, we said, well, what if we all got together and went on strike, and demanded real trailers, but no, and I think maybe hopefully I helped Greg feel okay about doing it, saying, yeah, well, listen, we'll just go and do it, and if it sucks, then it probably won't be seen. If it's great, then it'll be worth doing. It's like it seems like a fun little thing to try to do. So, and it was, I think the scenes with Greg and I were some of the first things we shot, and
yeah, the first day of shooting, some of
God,
which
there's nothing worse than sort of that first day, first take of improv of two guys like, okay, now talk about this, and just how gross is that feeling to have people watching you pretend to have a conversation. But after you get through that, I think after the first 5 minutes of that, we found a rhythm and we found a way to do it that
well,
was natural.
particularly because, and I think I don't think you'd argue with this, but I mean, because of your familiarity with Greg and familiarity with Eric, and in a particular way that you started to have off-screen conversations with Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the pretending to have a conversation, the lines of that blurred with an actual conversation. I mean, when during the Hobocock scene, I mean, it turns into this is something that you guys were doing off screen, and I mean, it wasn't a legitimate exploration of this thing. I mean, it's albeit in a fictional context, but
Yeah,
I
and also your direction and sort of throughout this thing was make sure to always remember that when these guys are talking, there's also a lot of dead time, and there's just sort of boredom, and you don't always have to be cracking jokes. It doesn't have to have this energy. It can be quiet, and it can be just
uncertain
uncertain and dead. And
and
you're
flair.
trying ideas. Some of them don't. Some of them, you don't finish the idea. You kind of like abandon ideas.
Yeah.
So that felt like, and the being able to shoot on digital, and giving the ability to have these long takes certainly helped us just shoot for a while and find little moments. I guess this is the one of the scenes where the beard. We were very concerned about the length of the stubble and the mustache and the hair and everything. It definitely vacillates throughout the film,
Yeah,
but
like there, it's pretty long on you, right? Oh,
well,
that.
I
Oh,
was going to say it
sorry.
was
That
pretty
was.
short. The beard was pretty trim, but I guess it doesn't matter. But now that I've mentioned it, I think maybe people will take notice. I mean, if there's a scene in the movie that kind of is a scene of its day, or a scene that represents sort of a, a, a group
And,
of a class of people or a group of people, it's got to be this scene, right? I mean,
yeah,
this.
I mean this kind of innocent, particular kind of recreation with grown adults in a modern day society. I mean, I think that I don't know. I mean, these scenes were much longer. This is William Basinski's disintegration loops um, playing, and I think that this scene initially was much longer. I could watch it for a long time. I mean, I think that there's a kind of sad beauty about it.
Yeah, it's to me. I look at these guys as it's there's very little seriousness in their lives. There's very little respect for anything, for structure, for government, family, church. These tent poles of society, and there's a
And
sort of an anarchy to it, and a sort of apathy towards it that they can't even get a baseball game going.
yeah, and I mean, but the funny thing about it is, like in this scene, I think the reason why, to some degree, it's a little, it's bittersweet and a little liberating is because this is what they do best. I mean, this is them at their, like, even past the intelligence of their communication and the irony. I mean, that was an unhinged moment where you see them actually taking advantage of their position in life, by having, a joyful, innocent
Right.
engagement with the world. Back on the boat here,
Yeah.
a lot of sitting, some more
Not
pat.
not a flattering pose. You know,
Yeah.
it's really spilling over those tight dickies.
I'm glad you weren't in the editing room, Tim,
Yeah.
because there was there were a lot more flattering.
Sure.
More, yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of me pensively looking off the bow, dreamy shots set shot during magic hour. That probably would be a lot more better for my reel.
Yeah, better for the real, but
Yeah, not as striking for the film. I see.
this is back in Yonkers at the this old money mansion that had fallen into disrepair over the years. Um, we sort of this scene was kind of just tacked on. We walked into this room and this empty pool, indoor pool, and it was so, such kind of an amazing location that it seemed to
Yeah, I mean,
sum up a lot of
it might be
things.
worth mentioning that the cinematographer Mark. I'm going to mess his name up, so you say it.
Mark Schwartzbard,
Yeah, Schwarzbard. And he was working with the camera, the Alexi, and
Arri Alexa.
the Arri Alexa, and it must have given you so much freedom to kind of shoot whatever wherever you wanted, right? I mean, if you would have gone in with a shittier camera, it would have taken you half the day to make that pool scene look good. I would think. I mean, there was very little lights, and there was very little manipulating of the scene, of lighting the
Yeah, I mean,
scene.
me and Mark had a lot of conversations about, fighting against some of the instinct for the beautiful in the shots, like trying to move away from the desire to make something beautiful. Now these particular shots are lovely in their way, but there are some in the movie that are less than flattering and sort of gritty, and it's not quite as cinematically constructed as hopefully we're used to seeing.
Well, yeah, I mean, my reaction to this, I don't. I mean, my reaction is that the film looks amazing. It looks beautiful, and it looks consistent. It's very well made, and to me, that works because the film the technique of the film style stays out of the way. It lets you enjoy the other elements of the film because you're not wondering what is this director trying to say with the style of the movie. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You don't agree, but
Sorry, I was watching the
yeah.
movie. No, I
It
agree.
also it also seems to put a serious note. I mean, it conveys like a message of this is a serious film. This is not a student film. This is not this is not a lo-fi ironic film. This is an important thing.
Shit on the vagina.
Somebody said, which I agree with, that there's a lot of control. You're as a director, you're displaying an incredible amount of control in the way the film's constructed and composed and edited.
Well, it's that sort of, that's nice of them to say, but I mean it's that sort of thing where, you know, you have this initial blueprint, and again, this was like a 20-page document, maybe 18 to 20-page script without scripted dialogue, and you know, we had these conversations about the character and the context, and as we move toward the scenes, we talk about, you know, some of the conveyance about what's said to, and the narrative and how it's conveyed, and the scenes are written, and others are developed further in conversation, and then we shoot. So there, it's a kind of uncontrolled nature by design, because I mean there's an aim and a kind of naturalism with the thing, and part of what I think that there's the disconnect between what we see in movies and what we see on the street and in our homes is this effort at communication that is so prominent in the world, and something we encounter daily, and the highly constructed nature of movies that we walk into, and how different those worlds really are. We even forget how different they are. So I mean, there's this uncontrolled nature of the actual, some elements of the shoot, bringing you know, the actors in, and the nature of responding to the moment, and the mood at the moment, and the effort at trying to communicate, or finding the words to communicate, and these sort of risky kind of things that are a bit destabilizing for both the viewer and for the participants, and then it's about bringing the whole thing back into some kind of order. You know, I mean, you know, the capture with Mark, that's one kind of order that's imposed on the thing, and then ultimately in the edit, it's about, you know, imposing a much stricter order. And I think maybe some of that control is just the summation of trying to harness all this chaos, you know.
Yeah. I was picking my asshole. I agree, you know. So here we are in Brooklyn Nights, Bed-Stuy.
I'm looking for work.
This is a scene that got some walkouts at Sundance, didn't it?
Yeah, I guess. I think it's maybe the second wave.
Second wave of walkouts, yeah.
That was such bullshit. I mean, not that the walkouts, I don't care if any, you know, people can walk out, but this sort of film, the first time anyone saw the movie was at Sundance, and
the Sundance folks were great. When they were
the guys, the programmers
John
were fantastic.
and Trevor,
yeah,
and
absolutely. I mean, they were excited about this movie, and it seemed, I thought in my mind, at least my perception of what Sundance is, that this is a perfect movie for that. And but there's a one level of people at that go to Sundance, probably for, I don't know, maybe not the right reasons. They're there for celebrity sightings, or it's a status thing, or it's like a, you know, it ties into their ski schedule.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a small percentage, but it was really interesting to see. I mean, we showed this movie to 1,200 people that one time at the Eccles, I think.
Yeah, and
1,000 people, and to see like that, you never would have. That's sort of something I'm really thankful for, even though it was incredibly irritating to see some of these folks' reaction to the material, and telling about the cloistered nature, perhaps, of their lives. But
and I'll also I mean, my larger point is that I understand people are going to walk out, people aren't going to like this movie, and that's their prerogative. And sometimes people are just walking out because they're like, you know what, it's late, I've got another movie I want to see more, or whatever. That's fine. But the press, and it got written about in a certain way where that sort of became the story of the movie, and that's not, I don't think that was fair.
No,
and I think
basically,
it's lazy,
people are,
and it's there's a sense of the journalist needs to find a hook or needs to find an angle that's shocking or captivating in a way that's not necessarily reflective of the experience of the movie. Thus, it gives this movie this reputation that it doesn't really deserve.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's I mean, basically, we had a great diversity of well, not actually, but I mean, a great temperamental or maybe people who saw the movie in those thousand seats at Eccles. I mean, we typically you wouldn't have a movie like this reaching that kind of audience because it's
Right.
more, they exist on the periphery of culture, and it was really interesting to see certain individuals' response to certain scenes like this. That seem to touch nerves that are. It's bizarre in the 21st century. Those nerves would still, you know, would be so tender for individuals that have such access to so much information and yeah.
Right. Yeah. I
Here's a
mean,
here's a vomit scene.
I think you had said this before, but it seemed like maybe a lot of people were reacting to much more uh, sort of primal problems with this film that they had, like the unconventional story structure and the sort of lack of these plot points that you find in almost every other movie.
Yeah, and
And that
a lack of the safety net that's in so many movies to help you deal with unsavory subject matter, as opposed to making you sit through something or I mean,
right,
essentially, we
yeah, like
love to see.
if this movie, well, I guess I mean in some sense that the sister-in-law operates as sort of that voice of reason, but if you had a stronger character that was trying to reform this person, there'd be a sense of that the audience is going through this experience on the side of the reformer.
Right, this sort of positive transformation that we were sitting down, and it would be liberating for individuals to see that. But the funny thing about it is people also have this great lust to see uh, you know heinous characters couched in a way that is purely cinematic. Whether it's some kind of evil character that's made to look evil, or that is made enjoyable. And they're like, oh well, it's just a movie. I don't actually have to deal with like the tepid, protracted nature of a person who's struggling with life and struggling with propriety and kindness and cruelty and these things. I mean, this was something that came up over and over again, Tim. I think is this sort of that the character was so unsympathetic, and for people to desire this sort of sympathy in a character is a purely kind of cinematic uh, uh,
Trick.
yeah. It's I mean, it's taught to us, I think, by
Yeah.
the way, by Hollywood.
But there's plenty of examples in the golden age of cinema. Not the golden age, but the 70s with
The Bronze Age.
yeah the auteur age of Altman and
Oh yeah.
Cassavetes and these guys touching in. That's when you talked about this movie. Those were people we talked about. And you probably have more influences than that. But, for me, like having just recently seen a movie called California Split, which is a Robert Altman movie with Elliot Gould, and
I just watched that too. When did you see it?
about a year ago. Did you just recently see it?
I did just recently see it.
Fantastic, right?
Yeah, it's a really bizarre film.
Yeah.
It's like it's one of his more bizarre ones.
Yeah.
The meandering nature of
I
the
loved
thing.
the subject matter. I just loved these two guys that were really just lowlifes, and I felt like it's a kind of guy that you don't see very much anymore. Certainly not in movies, but just a great ending of just not a happy ending. Good performances, I thought. Not much to like about them.
Okay, I'll just have champagne. But speaking of American terrorists, I was just reading this thing about Timothy McVeigh.
So we had these sort of buzzwords, right? I mean, when we were talking, like, you know, what are conversation starters that will be considered taboo?
Yeah, like in this scene, we're talking about, we flirted with justifications of criminality and uh, catastrophic events or
Mhm.
awful apocalyptic moments through history, or McVeigh and these sort of taboo subjects. But I think that there was something about it too that was important that it touched on in this scene. Like, and it does periodically. I think that's why it's difficult to write this movie off as a Hangover sort of
Mhm.
dramatic version of The Hangover, because it's obvious that these individuals have education, and that their intellects are at work, and
Right.
even in these recreational moments.
Yeah. I think it's funny though, these guys that are sort of college educated and are capable of holding a conversation, but at the same time they're not experts on anything. So there's a lot of sort of, I think This American Life did a story about this a while ago, and this, me talking about this, is this very thing,
Right.
is this sort of general, I think it's called the uh, asshole. Somebody's gonna send me a note with the correct definition of this, but it's guys, it's people that can sit around and go, I think, wasn't Timothy McVeigh, wasn't he part of that militia that was, and it's all this like half information and stuff people heard and think they know about, and suddenly you become like, I think it's called an asshole expert. It's somebody who's is like an expert on things, but they're not really, and then you get into these dumb arguments with people that are the same way. Having the iPhone in your hand has kind of solved that problem a little bit, because at some point you go, what, let me just look this up, and then you find out that you've been wrong, or the other person is wrong, which is even better. But I like that scene. It's like this idleness of like,
it's like we're in this strange evolutionary moment between completely relinquishing ourselves from carrying around information in our minds,
right,
and in a more antiquated time where we needed to do that, where education essentially was how many facts you had at your disposal in your mind at any given moment,
right.
and the comprehension of those things. And we're in this weird region between like a complete unloading of that stuff. You talk to some young people and they're like, well, why would I know that? I don't need, why would I carry around this useless information? I can just look it up in my phone.
Right. Yeah, and there's some truth to that. I mean, it's like, well, what's the difference? It's in this thing that I carry in my pocket as opposed to in my skull. So
this is a hard scene to edit. There were some versions that were, that of all the scenes in the movie next to the church, I think that this scene is, it becomes kind of titillating, and humorous, and really, takes you away with it. But to keep that in check to some degree, to find, essentially, if you were in that cab in actuality, I mean, there would be a level of discomfort by being with that driver,
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was a bit of a challenge which side of the, to marshal that to one side of the fence or the other, or to have this kind of balance.
Well, I think you've done a good job of there are a few, the scene with the male nurse and with the cab driver. You're checking in with these guys enough to show that they're feeling uncomfortable.
And I think
by
a barometer of that was, I mean, knowing that those scenes are offensive to some people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good thing. That means that, that the information's there.
Yeah, there's no glory in this. I don't think there's any sense of like you're justifying and there's no glorification of the behavior here. It's merely an observation of it. I like to think of that cab ride into this scene as like the little road movie in this movie. Doesn't it feel like these guys on a little
Yeah,
pilgrimage or something.
they're on a pilgrimage
Yeah,
around Greenpoint and
of
surrounded
debauchery.
by.
Well, it's funny being if you know Greenpoint, um, and North Williamsburg, I guess as well. That got like when I lived there, you did feel a little bit like you were in another country because it's predominantly Polish, and it's Polish people who have really kind of kept their culture alive. So there is like it's funny if you pretend these guys really are just tourists in another country. It kind of um, there's not really a lot of that in the movie itself, but I guess there was in some scenes that were cut where Eric and I are talking to the Polish couple and sort of pretending to not understand them and stuff. But
Yeah, yeah, it'd be nice to. Well, that was a great scene. It just, man, it's so strange. Like in that 17 days, how we had this movie at a 4 hour cut with all
yeah,
those scenes in it.
well, you know, it kind of goes to this thing of these guys who don't have their own identity, that their culture is so based on these flimsy things like music, and not that music is flimsy, but sort of these very temporal current things that define them, and fashion, you know, and to live in a town, and specifically in Greenpoint, where you have a much richer, deeper, older culture around you. Um, you know, for me, also living in South Philadelphia for a while amongst old Italians, it's like you're always reminded of sort of how you don't fit in wherever you are. Um,
And that's
where
interesting
I
because
where
I
I
mean this
fit, yeah,
scene in the church here, although it's you see some of the adolescent joy of these fellas, but it's also like a feeling that they're tourists that are defiling the environment of their tourism. But I
right,
mean there is a sense of the foreignness of this place to them. How they relate to it is indicative of their particular natures, but there is a foreign element to them even being in a church, that inspires this kind of behavior, which is
yeah,
relevant to what you're saying,
but yeah,
not just
I think it,
cultural, but I mean, even the real, that we keep coming back to this idea of the tenets of society, the pillars that have always been there, whether they be family or religion or,
right,
even an involvement in government. I
yeah,
mean, that particularly with, the America that you and I know, those things are increasingly irrelevant to so many people,
yeah,
and what is left is an amorphous, ephemeral kind of place that's occupied by these recreations. And
yeah. I mean, it's fascinating to me, and it's like I grew up in the suburbs, and there's not a lot of identity there. There's not a lot of. I mean, I guess there is, but it's you're kind of bred and taught through school, through culture, through your parents, through everything, that you could be whoever you want to be. You could do whatever you want to do. You kind of have the world at your doorstep, and if you want to be a lawyer, you want to be a doctor, you want to be an artist, you want to be whatever you want to be, you can be that. And there's very little development of your own culture, or where there's very little.
well, a
Uh,
concept of like a concrete nature of what of a lineage of people or a comprehension, except for, I mean, I'm sure that my suburban neighborhood was much like maybe where you grew up, Tim.
mm-hmm.
In suburban Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I mean that there were no the outside of Norristown, where I grew up, we just nobody ever went inside the small town. We occupied the suburban neighborhoods and kept to our houses and played with like-minded kids and
Right.
of the same.
Yeah. And watched a lot of TV.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. I
A
think that
shitload of
TV
TV.
was our exposure to the actual dynamic nature of the world. Because
Right.
it certainly wasn't present in the environments a lot of us grew up in.
Yeah. So then you get plopped out into the world, and you're like, well, I don't really belong with these Polish people, and I don't really belong with the African American neighborhood, but I'm living here for some reason because it's cool and it's affordable and it's close to things that I want to be by. But the only people I really know are other sort of outcasts that have tried to make a name in the city, you know. And then that culture has developed, and I guess those are hipsters, right? I mean, that's what.
I mean, yeah, I think that that again, that flirtation of that the luxury of being able to choose your relationship to a place and to cultures and to even to create your all the attributes of that culture through dress or whatever at your whim. Um, it's a really bizarre state. And
Yeah, and I think these guys. I mean, I think I've. Um, it doesn't bother me quite as much as it did, and I've settled down about it. And I'm married and live in a house and have grown-up friends, and but at the same time, I think these guys are in the movie. I feel like are having a kind of a existential crisis around it because maybe they shouldn't be living as foolishly as they are, and maybe they know that.
yeah, I think obviously it's predominantly the Swanson character that has the almost the gumption and the bravery among his group of fictional friends in the movie to delineate those boundaries and to push that envelope, um, regardless of if it's through cruelty or curiosity. There we are on the corner of Manhattan and Bedford.
Yeah, I mean one of the reasons that I was interested in this movie was I felt there really hasn't been a movie that talked about these guys. And as much as I don't like a lot of things about these guys or people like this, it is as close to me as I've seen, or people like me captured. And I think it's capturing them. And, there's probably a way to capture people like this in a much more forgiving, understanding, sympathetic light. So this is certainly taking the harsher perspective on us because you could find much sweeter, much more sympathetic people to follow around. But,
and to be honest, I think we both feel that there's enough of that in the in contemporary cinema, American indie cinema. There's enough of that sympathetic depiction, particularly of something so close to home,
right.
Even though there are differentiations. I mean, this is our demographic to some degree,
right? And it's a very obvious and wise early filmmaking tip is to make stuff about what you know, and that makes it easier to be genuine.
Well worth the money, man. Well worth.
I think this guy should have held out for more money, don't you? I think... This was fun, actually. I did get to drive this cab, and I was speeding around town in the middle of the night.
120 miles an hour on Nassau.
Yeah, I think we all have a fantasy of being a cab driver for a couple weeks, I certainly did.
Is that the first cab you've ever driven, Tim?
That's right.
You put that on your resume.
Definitely, under special skills. Easy.
Wow. Lots of cursing in this scene, huh?
Yeah. Suddenly the pace of the movie goes wild here. Just turns into a action movie.
Yeah, it's a full-on action movie.
So you've had a road movie and an action movie. Now, Rick, you did a lot of the music for this, correct?
Yeah, this is me playing piano and myself and our skipper for the film, Champ Bennett,
Mm-hmm.
um, digitally composing some of these sustained notes from the piano and creating the
Sound collage.
sound collage.
I mean, some people are confused. Look at that big bruise on my leg. Um, Confused by the music at times because there's a tendency to wonder: are you being ironic with the sort of pensive? Um, I love it, but there is there it does have sort of a connection to a minimalist. It's kind of music that you might find in a quote unquote indie movie. At the same time, I feel like it does we have connections, we have emotional connections to music, and that serves its purpose here. It makes you feel a certain way.
Every single time, an easy thing.
So
Well, it's also, I mean,
there's not a lot of, in other words, there's not a lot of
stuff.
irony in the music. There's not like I'm pretending to make a serious movie here. There's none of that. Correct?
Excuse me, what was it? What was that? What did you say?
You're not making an ironic. You're not being ironic with the music.
No, I think the music is I mean, there was an effort at some kind of neutrality. I mean, obviously, it tamps the thing down into a particular bandwidth of, a kind of, and it gets a little pensive. The funny thing about this movie, though, and about all of the elements that are in it, that if somebody were to read that as ironic, it doesn't bother me in the least. It actually, I mean, there's a flirtation with sincerity throughout so much of the content of the movie, um, and and even in the outside of the film with the title, that there's there's there was a certain freedom with that kind of stuff, you know. Um,
Yeah, yeah. If only
so I
to
think there's a
make
little bit of just as much, flirtation with the construction of the thing as there is with the protagonist's behavior in the world.
right. If only to make people a little put them on the back of their heels a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's that thing that I've always believed about being, you know, if we're slightly destabilized and uncertain about what we're watching, there's an inevitable biological, you know, drive to be more attentive because you're trying to figure out what it is that somebody's telling you, or are they telling you something? I mean, these sort of things that seem to irritate so many, contemporary American movie viewers are the very things that we are utilize in the world to take in information, these states of uncertainty and these states of attention. um, and I hope that makes the movie a bit of a thorn in the side, sends everybody home for, if somebody would have a restless night's sleep, I mean, what that would be great, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, and I think we found that on some of the festival circuit
Yeah,
that there are certain
people back to their hotels and
well,
homes and
yeah,
watching sleep.
no, but there are certain people that had immediate immediate reactions to the film that changed over time. That the more they thought about it, which I love that. I love when that happens. I love when you're not sure how you think about something and you have to kind of think about it, and your perception of that changes over time based on the way you meditate on it. So, three
So
cheers.
you brushed your teeth a lot in the film. Somebody asked me about why you brushed your teeth in the movie. Like,
Well, my dentist recommended I do this movie. He looked at my mouth and said, "I wish I could get you in a film that requires you to brush your teeth." So we went out. My agent went out looking for projects that had that in the script.
and I think there were with takes and did you brush your teeth in the morning? Did you find
No,
yourself
no, I
not
don't
brushing
brush
your
my
teeth in
teeth
the morning?
normally.
Right,
So
right.
that's why my dentist was. I'm in another movie called The Dentist of Doctorville right now, shooting this summer with Jim Carrey and Antonio Banderas. and I play their favorite patient, so I get to brush my teeth. They brush my teeth about 3 or 4 times in the movie.
Is Caitlin Shield here?
Dispose of this dirty. Oh, you can't tell if it's trash here or your bread.
There was something I was going to ask you. You tried using the dish soap to clean out your asshole?
Yeah, I use it all the time.
Now this was a little challenging as opposed to Greg or Eric or Jensen, sort of creating a chemistry, creating a repertoire with somebody I didn't know very well. And Caitlin is terrific actress, and
So good.
but I didn't know her, and we didn't have a lot of time to sort of get to know each other. So,
But there was something exciting about like watching the two of you resort to it, the antagonism, that was so important to the thing. Like how that's almost a defense when it's easier to be sarcastic to somebody you don't know than it is to sometimes, And I think that the way that the both of you resort to that in this makes it work so well.
yeah, and I think the audience might find some relief in somebody that's able to sort of play on the same level as Swanson here.
Hey, great. Good luck.
What if we just started looping the commentary at this point?
I don't think anybody would notice. I just take a couple of your ponderous
This
monologues.
is an actual cut. That's a documentary style filmmaking. They're actual cut.
Fucking cunt, bitch, fuck,
Cunt, bitch, fuck. The 3 greatest curse words in the right order.
In
That's
this
so-
movie, at least.
Yeah, ouch. Now that's some good...
That hurt, didn't it? That was painful.
Yeah. No, that's actually some good makeup, I have to say. Usually that shit looks dumb. But, I don't remember the name of the man who did that work,
7 days.
but it's in the credits, and you should appreciate his work. Well, isn't it true, Rick? Some of the producers of this movie, look at that guy in the background, the bleeding head, are generally used to making like horror movies, correct?
Oh, Glass Eye Picks, Larry Fessenden and Brent Kunkel. They specialize in genre pictures. They've also worked with Kelly Reichardt and some. They do a lot of dynamic stuff, but they do a lot of horror pictures. Yeah.
And what about Mike Ryan? What Mike Ryan's producer on this film as well? I mean, what?
Yeah,
How
he's
did all
worked
these
with
people?
Kelly.
How did all these people come
he's
together?
worked with Todd Solondz and some other combustible, challenging filmmakers. Quite a history.
And is it a good story to find out how all these people came together to make this story, or is it just like it just kind of happened and it's not very interesting because we could skip it?
Yeah, I mean, it's people search out each other. They make phone calls, emails.
Yeah, so so it's boring. That's all I wanted to know. It's not like I was about to jump off the Brooklyn Bridge because nobody was going to fund my movie. I'll tell you, this is actually what happened because you told me. I was about to jump off the Brooklyn Bridge. Well, you were about to jump off the Brooklyn Bridge, and Mike Ryan came
Manhattan Bridge.
Manhattan Bridge came. You were on the Brooklyn side of the Manhattan Bridge.
Yeah.
And you were about to jump, and Mike Ryan drove by and said, "What's the problem, son?" And you said, "No one's going to help me make this movie." And he said, "I'll help you make the movie." And he got in his car, and he made you some hot soup and got you back feeling good about the movie.
Back on my feet.
Yeah. What an unflattering shot.
Oh, that woman's beautiful. What a sweet little lady. She's a very small woman.
She's like 2 feet tall. Because you had to use some kind of special macro lens to shoot her to make her look like normal sized person.
It was a hot summer, and there was no air conditioning in this abandoned hospital. these are the things that are strange about the commentary when you start essentially pulling the veil off of all of this and just reducing it to a film
Procedure.
set with all its contraptions and
Yeah.
deception, right?
Yeah.
Should we do that?
Yeah. I mean,
So this hospital was abandoned, and we had our art direction folks come in and um,
put paintings up and
you know, some
right,
of these
look like
beds were in there. They were all there was the place. Did it smell like urine a little bit? I think maybe it did. It definitely was moldy in there.
if it did, it was because of my underwear that I was wearing that I pissed in on the way over to set. Um, you know, speaking of makeup, or speaking of sweating and hot, I think we just both agreed that I wasn't going to wear any makeup, and I wasn't going to get patted down a lot. You know, like a lot of times makeup people come and pat you down to make sure you're not shiny, but we both wanted me to be as shiny
Shiny, yeah,
and
as it's shiny as a polished, uh, uh, polished
shaved
diamond.
balls. This guy looks like an actor. I can't remember his name.
Judd Nelson.
Yeah. Oh, English guy.
Oh,
With
Michael Caine.
Yeah, no, with the big nose. Boy,
Prince Charles.
Prince Charles.
This was I like this scene. This scene has a
Oh, good.
yeah.
Is this the only scene you like?
At the moment, yeah. That's Grace Rex right there.
I was going to say it's
she was
Kristen Wiig.
joy to have on set.
Little nepotism, don't you think? You know, the one conversation we had about directing me and
The one conversation.
well, one of the conversations we had was I wanted to be sure that I wasn't doing too much or wasn't acting too much, and there wasn't a lot of like. It's very hard to not do anything, you know. It's hard to just like kind of be dead, and so and I also didn't want to like mug and my natural tendency, my instinct is to make people laugh and to be a goofball. So,
but oh, go ahead. Sorry.
well, I just you know I was very I wanted to make sure that you were keeping an eye on me and making sure I wasn't looking like an ass. I wasn't behaving like an ass on camera, at least.
Or when you were, it was relevant.
It was relevant, and so we had like a couple different modes. Like this is you're in your dead zone mode, and you're in your sort of adventurous clowning around outward mode.
Yeah, both things that are accessible to you as a human being.
Right. And luckily, you know, you had the ability to shoot me for a long time, so you could find little pockets that worked.
This was a challenging scene, right? These.
Oh,
I don't know if
God.
anybody out there knows, but you're not supposed to shoot on the subway.
This is your budget right here. I mean, this is This is New York City, Upper West Side. You know, it feels like a big movie.
I wish we could rewind because there were some jackasses in that last scene that were these extra Nazis who kept showing up in different outfits and ruining the takes. And
Oh, really?
yeah,
I
it'd be
never-
nice to point them out. I'm sure they'd enjoy that because they're
Publicly humiliate them.
horrendous human beings.
This is my ode to the Three Stooges here. There's well, I don't remember the name of the film, but one of their films where they were shaving each other and doing their morning routine, and they're just shaving cream everywhere, and the singing, and Um, very entertaining to me.
How you doing? You have some coffee there, Tim? Tim's
Me?
in L.A. right now, and I'm in Richmond, Virginia.
Yeah. I had some. I have had enough that I feel like I might need to pee, but I think I'll just hold on.
We should have warned trucker buddies
Yeah.
for this because it's a normal length film, but it certainly isn't short.
No, I always have to pee several times during a film. It's just making me less and less interested in going to see movies in the theater these days because as soon as I sit down, the feeling begins.
Overwhelms you probably.
Yeah. That's all I can think about. So this is arguably the biggest scene in the movie, one of the biggest scenes in the movie.
Jesus Christ.
That was not real marijuana. That's not an area I want to go into. Casually smoking marijuana on a film set and then being asked to perform, and it's just not going to be good.
Well, I mean, maybe if we were shooting you in like a fetal position,
right, in the dark.
We're back in the boat, and something that is interesting to me is to just get into the boat and not play around with these establishing shots and contextual things. I mean, it's funny how people can use their senses when they try to comprehend where they are in a place or an environment.
Yeah, some people I've talked to said the film felt very claustrophobic at times because you are just in these close-ups, and I think that's probably a good place to put people in for this film. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But I like this scene because I think it's very genuine. It feels very real. It feels that there's a sense of humanity to this character that has been sort of peeking its head out every once in a while. He's being as entertaining as he can be to get laid,
I mean, yeah, that we're back. This has a corollary in the wiffle ball scene, and insofar as that it's like a pure side of that adolescent behavior. I mean, this flirtation is.
Yeah, this sort of like blaming the heat on taking the clothes
sweet
off is very. It's been in many of these situations before. Just not good at making the first move.
This yeah. I won't say that this is based on your honeymoon.
No. But. No, but it is like the worst. Making that first move is very uncomfortable. It's very embarrassing, especially if it's not reciprocated. But she's in the boat. She's got her shirt off. I think she's probably ready to go.
What happens with cheese? That's an actual functional part.
And it's just excruciating. Just fucking jump on her.
Oh, you'll see. This zipper actually works. It's fully functions.
All this joking around, all these bits. And that fucking lick of the finger is really, really wretched.
We had Kate watch some number of seizure videos looking for slight aberrations in the way that they're usually portrayed. It's funny how there's some amount of uncertainty even in this, that could have been explained easier about exactly what's occurring to her. I mean, some of us it's obvious and others it isn't. But it's so much more disappointing and boring to portray something just like it's been portrayed a million times.
Did you ever have any second thoughts on that reaction of this shot here of
Oh, this shot?
of the dead look?
Second thoughts about it. I mean, this is the most,
I know. I'm
arguably
saying
one of
it,
the
but
most important shots for me
but
in the movie.
it's very bold.
This,
It's very bold.
you know, this voyeurism and this distance and this viewership. I mean, there's something that you don't even have to flirt with metaphor to see that that's the same state that most of us are in watching the movie.
Right. I'm not criticizing it. I'm saying it must have occurred to you that it's going to elicit strong reactions.
Yeah, initially, I mean, there was an edit we flirted with where that ended the film.
Wow, short movie.
Well, the other stuff at the end here was earlier.
Oh, I see. No, that would have been a bad move.
This is Tim's driving an actual dinghy with Mark in the front and Kate. In the pitch black night, we got more of an exposure through the Alexa. It wasn't as bright as you're seeing, and they all just about got decapitated by some wires. It's very dangerous. These independent movies are dangerous.
Yeah, there's my one freak out I had on the movie was around this period because I had to keep taking the dinghy in and.
Oh, justifiably so.
I mean, and people were telling me 10 different things, and everybody had their best intentions. They didn't want to see anybody get hurt, but I was getting told 10 different things, and I just said, shut the fuck up. I know what I'm fucking doing. God damn it. And
you're specifically speaking when people started yelling at you that you guys were going toward those wires.
Right. Even though from my perspective I could see the wires and I knew I wasn't going to go in that way. So yeah.
Well, we were just worried about you.
That's what I said. You heard me say that. I said I knew everybody had their best intentions. I had my one little diva moment, which I yelled at people for about a second and then calmed down and then went around apologizing.
Oh my God, I know. It was a whole cycle. It was like
it was beautiful.
Yeah,
the full range.
It's like from birth to death. I saw the dynamic of life and the rainbow and all of that. This is arguably one of my favorite scenes.
What is this?
I love this scene too. I think Eric does a great job of narrating, being a host, and the music. Tell me the name of the guy again.
Bill Fay.
Bill Fay. Everybody write this guy down. Now, is it on an album or will it be on the? Will it be on the soundtrack?
Jaguar actually just, or is it secretly Canadian? One of the two released a new record by him. He was a.
What is the difference between Jaguar and Secretly Canadian? I think that's what everybody really wants to know.
Yeah. Who are they?
No, what is the difference between the two of the? It's the same.
Oh, they're two different labels that are affiliated with one another very closely.
I see.
Yeah, work out of the same office, share.
Why not just combine the name?
Well, they had a different genesis at different times, and they have different, they have their own lives and their own interests.
I see.
But these Bill Fay songs are from some are from some demos that he had done in the '70s, and others are from the first record, Bill Fay. Great stuff. And this was really fun to flirt with. Essentially, Eric's commentary and some of you guys' reactions to the slides, and we did this in other places with some of the group things, as far as commenting or being present about the production, and then me being able to recontextualize it in this fiction, I mean, at times you all are laughing about, Eric says, he talks about he doesn't, know who has the camera and this sort of stuff. And
right.
These are Richard Kern donated these the pornographic stills.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask about that. Were they in the slides that you showed that on set?
Or no, we have different ones. We needed that were uncleared.
Oh, so you swapped them in. How did you do that then with the foreground silhouettes?
Oh, it's just 21st century ingenuity.
Wow. Jensen with a black eye.
Yeah, that's real.
Not for my fist.
Oh, I love this woman.
It's great. Sleepy time.
Just a Sunday with the family.
You know, they're hungover. There's nothing to do. Dead. It's a shame how many people in this movie are dead now. Dead. Dead. Still alive. You know what would have been nice in this scene is a
Oh yeah,
yeah, they're gonna have to cut that out.
yeah, they are.
So
Fuck.
here we are in the the melodrome.
The melodrama.
The melodrome.
This is, we got you riding around the melodrama.
Well, this was hard for me. I know how to ride a bike, of course, but going around those curves was very scary.
Yeah,
And
this is on the street.
Oh, this is on the street. I see. Yeah, of course. But before on the melodrome. Yeah. I mean, the goal was like ride until. But I'm such an accomplished rider that I could have ridden for miles and not broken a sweat.
That's actual saliva.
Prop saliva.
We are at where are we here? We're not. Were we in Rockaway?
Manhattan Beach or something like that? Or, no.
We were in Rockaway.
Yeah.
And
it's fun. It's fun to get to do this kind of stuff. You know,
movie making, commentaries.
Movie making. You get to go to the beach.
Yeah.
Get to carry a bike around on your back. We had a hard time casting a kid, or you had a hard time casting a kid for this scene.
Yeah, well, you can't find too many tolerable the actor kids. They're
the worst.
They're grotesque monsters. So we found this beautiful, incredible little fella down the street that was playing, and his mom brought him over, and he was.
It's funny. It was weird because one of the last days of shooting, this might have actually been the last day. No, it was the second to last day, and this woman, this really pretty, like kind of tattooed woman who's brought her son, seemed like she could have been in the movie. She kind of had this hipster quality to her, but she had this kid. And she was living out by the beach. She had a little house, and which is a good distance from the city. It's far out. It's the far Rockaways. And she was like, "Yeah, we moved here a couple years ago, me and my husband, and we operate this taco truck, and it's great. We thought we would kind of be out here and go into the city a lot on the weekends and stuff, but we just kind of live out here now." And we're like, "Oh, this is the next level. This is like people that are like going to be moving out of the cities again, and if you're lucky enough to live on the beach, I mean, she wasn't living in fancy digs or anything, but these people, I think there's certainly going to be people going out and living in the country and realizing that they don't have to be going to Enid's every Saturday night anymore."
Oh, that's the end of the movie.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
when I saw the end of this, when you showed me the end of this movie, it was like getting punched in the stomach a little for a minute, for a second. It was like, oh, wow.
Oh, that's good.
It really, because first of all, I knew that there was some scenes that were shot that didn't make it, which were fine. It was fine, but wasn't expecting the ending at all. I don't think anybody's expecting the ending to come when it does. And it reminded me of another movie called 2001: A Space Odyssey, because it just left you with questions and left. It didn't have an end. It didn't wrap things up in a nice, neat package, which I thought was very cool.
Well, on that note,
On that note, I want to thank you, Rick, for Skyping me and using Skype technology.
and yeah, Tim, I'd like to thank you for the conversation and the collaboration, and the digital joy of us spending this time together this past 90 so minutes.
And if you don't mind, I'm going to go urinate now.
All right.
Thanks for listening, everyone.